the,
All right.
Motion to approve minutes from last week.
what's this?
A
I'm
motion
sorry.
to approve the minutes from last week.
I don't think I even brought that up as an agenda item. Right. So first, we're gonna approve the minutes of
Motion.
April 14th, 2021. Anyone? Oh, I see Mr. Brooks.
I'll second.
Josh, you're seconding. All right, all those, we love them. Great, done. All right, next thing is the community focus staff board discussion of what is happening in community as it relates to youth and family. Sarah, take it away.
So I just keep this on the agenda to get a pulse of what's happening in the community. I did include in the board packet, and you probably haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, but the MHA COVID-19 growing mental health crisis. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things in here because I just think it's so relevant to
Amazing. Those numbers.
Yeah.
Like the suicide, the ideation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely concerning. And I know we've talked about this, but I think this, the numbers are really kind of showing us that there's some problems. So just a couple things in the executive summary, and I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but just a couple of things to highlight. Young people are struggling most with their mental health. The proportion of youth ages 11 to 17 who did the screening was 9% higher than the average in 2019. Not only are the numbers of youth searching for help with their mental health increasing, but throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, youth ages 11 to 17 have been more likely than any other age group to score for moderate to severe symptoms of anxiety and depression. Rates of suicidal ideation are highest among youth, especially the LGBTQ plus youth. In September 2020, nearly half of 11 to 17-year-olds reported having thoughts of suicide or self-harm. More than half nearly every day for the previous 2 weeks. From January to September 2020, 77470 youth reported experience frequent suicidal ideation, including 27,980 LGBTQ plus youth. There's also some information in here about various races. While rates of anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation are increasing for people of all races and ethnicities, there's notably differences between the changes over time. Black or African-American screeners have had the highest average percentage change over time for anxiety and depression, while Native Americans and American Indian screeners have had the highest average percentage change over time for suicidal ideation. So, I mean, really, you can take your time and kind of reading through the rest. I mean, what it really highlights is a need for additional services, a need for increased services for the BIPOC community, and an increased need for the LGBTQ plus community. So with that in mind, we've really tried to do some additional community outreach and have actually recently started a group for LGBTQ plus youth. And what we're thinking for the summertime is to also start a parenting group for parents supporting their LGBTQ plus youth. So that's something new that we just started this month. It starts next week, and hoping that that can kind of help alleviate some of these things. Our wait list is still phenomenal. And even with the 2 part-time people starting, just more and more people are calling us every day, kind of looking for services. So we're just trying to manage that as well. I'm also hearing that the interface referral service, who we use to kind of help get people in the door in therapy when we can't see them, is just so overworked, and there are no resources out there because everyone has wait lists. So people are waiting a really long time to try to access services. So we're just trying to do what we can and doing a lot of kind of community crisis interventions and, trying to get people's needs met, the immediate needs met, so they can get through until they can see somebody longer term.
Excuse me, Sarah. Julia says she's trying the host. You have to let her in.
She's not popping up.
Sarah, given that, there's going to be a ripple effect of the pandemic, and I think we're going to keep seeing more and more, kids needing services, is there any thought about trying to hire an additional staff person, like a full-time?
Kevin, she just popped up. I just accepted her.
Hello, Julie.
Hi, Julie.
Hi,
Thank you,
finally.
Susan. As we end the meeting,
Sorry about that, everyone.
Now we're,
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Everything,
now we're
right?
the full Brady Bunch.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Kevin, I keep going.
No, you do it. Oh,
No, you do it. You do it. I assume you guys started, right?
Yeah, we started.
Keep
We
going.
were just talking about the increased mental health needs in the community at this time.
So is there any thought? I mean, I know there's a space issue and obviously a budget issue, but I mean, there's certainly evidence that the needs are going to be increasing and therapists outside of that are full and resources are short.
Yep. Yeah, so we're just beginning to consider that, potentially writing proposals to advocate for that. You know, a lot of times in the summertime, our cases, a lot of youth that we see kind of ongoing trail off in the summertime and then pick back up in the fall. So sometimes, like a couple summers ago, we were able to clear our wait list in the summer. So I'm waiting just a little bit to see what happens, to see if we can do that again. And if not, I think that step will be important, because I do think that there is going to be a trickle down effect. You know, we're seeing that even with things opening back up and vaccines available, and, you know, now 12 plus can get the vaccines, which is great, but there is this kind of lingering trauma that people have experienced. And I think that there's going to be a need for more supportive services.
Yeah, I could see like a ripple effect. I mean, I figure as we return to in-person stuff, things might ease up. I don't know, but I wonder if there'll still be like residual ripples throughout through next year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the things highlighted in the data was really around like feelings of loneliness and isolation. So hopefully that piece improves. But I do still think that there's a tremendous, you know, there's so much loss, there's increased anxiety, and, you know, maybe we can meet some of these needs on a short-term basis. But I think that there are also a group of people who, you know, have lost loved ones and have experienced just a more extreme amount of trauma. And that this pandemic has really highlighted some racial inequalities and racism that the community is experiencing, and how can we help with that as well. So it's definitely a challenge, but Susan, to your point, yes, we're very strongly considering it, and just going to see how the next couple of weeks go.
You know, so I also think the pandemic has showed off society's darker side. I mean, like, people did not get along. People fought about masks. They, you know, this didn't feel like my parents talking about World War II, how like everyone was pitching in. This sort of was, I think, a less than stellar example of how the community is supposed to behave.
Agreed.
That's just my 2 cents.
And it's a shame, because I think that there were some times within the community where people really rallied and like worked together. And, you know, I've worked more with various departments and divisions than I ever had in the past, and running programs and accomplishing all these amazing things. But and then there's this other side where it really brought out the worst in people, and the anger and frustration and blaming. And that's definitely something that was very present in the community as well.
I think also for everybody, but particularly for kids, just knowing that a pandemic can happen and that we had one is just the start of having, you know, I think that there's a lot of underlying anxiety that kids are feeling about that. I mean, I'm hearing that with my kids. You know, well, this one's over, we can have another one. And, you know, it was something that, you know, people didn't really think about a whole lot.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And very valid. And I think the media also picks up on that. So, you know, early on, I was reading articles about like, oh, there might be this other pandemic brewing. Like there's this one case of this rare disease in Africa.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it, you know, bringing it up to scare people and get attention, but it just, you know, it definitely breeds anxiety. Anything specific to Needham that you all and that anyone has noticed recently, or anything new coming up? I know, you know, schools are open. People have various opinions about being excited or not so excited about that? David?
My 3 kids participated in their first Needham Youth and Family Services event of the spring cleanup over break.
Did you see their picture on the board packet?
No, I did not. Oh. Oh, that's awesome.
How was it? Did they
It
enjoy
was
it?
awesome. Yeah, they loved it. And did you see the cool certificates that Carolyn sent?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. That's great.
they were very excited.
Good.
I know the Pollard School, they hold like an LGBTQ kind of like social club. So that's been good for like the students there to just meet with peers who are also experiencing that or going through that or transition, whatever they're doing. They can just chat. It's like an open, safe space for them. I'm not sure if parents are involved in that, but I think the high school does something similar.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. I think, what we're hearing is that there's more and more of a need for this for middle school students and that it's coming up in middle school. And that the current class, it's definitely necessary. So I'm glad that Pollard has started to do something as well. That's great.
Yeah, the staff is great about accepting it and like just being open to it. Even kids who want to like say change their name or identify differently as say like non-binary or whatever it is, everyone's very on board with it. So the students feel more comfortable.
That's great.
A lot of happy high school students recently. I think people are just happy to see other people's faces. It definitely, I will say, from subjectively a senior perspective, going in and seeing everybody was almost like a stimulation overload that first day. It was a little nuts. Then we got used to it, but now being at home like extra sucks. Like if that makes sense. So I feel like everybody's a little nervous about going back, but I do think people are just like, I get to see my friends again. This is awesome. And I haven't felt that about school in a very long time. So that's really nice.
That's great. That's great.
Josh, I don't know if you got a chance to view it, but the one day that was at the high school that was a couple hours, I thought was like fantastically well done.
They
And
killed it.
it was also around the all school read book
Mhm.
and issues of transgender youth. And they had former students that talked about experiences, and then several members of PFLAG shared and then answered questions. It was a YouTube live event at the end.
Yeah,
Wow.
I really enjoyed it. Something about the fact that it was really well put together because it wasn't live. Like it was live, but it wasn't really live. You know what I mean? It was a live recording. That I thought was just it really like they got their point across better than having like really an open council about it. The fact that it wasn't like really mandatory was a little bit kind of shy to me. It just kind of made me sad that not everybody was actually watching it, but that's just life. You know what I mean? I couldn't expect everybody to get on it, but it was great. Like this was the first year that I like really think one day like knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, and to go, sort of going into it and feeling like, oh, should this be done? Like from a teacher standpoint, should this be done over Zoom? Like, how many kids are going to miss it? What's the sort of conversation after? We're doing it sort of in the middle of the day and without sort of a built-in. But I was really impressed with it, and I think it could be a really good resource also to use because it was recorded and
Oh yeah.
returned to missed it.
Yeah, I do think that like if you want to reuse the resource, especially for I don't think a lot of teachers really get into that. Besides psychology, weirdly, actually what happened, I know this is kind of a non sequitur, but I was in my unit of psychology, we got to gender identity the second one day happened. So it kind of was like this perfect alignment. My teacher's like, I don't even have to teach the unit. Like I'm just gonna let you guys go to one day. So that was funny. But yes, I do think it's a great teaching tool as well, and it would be great for a curriculum.
That's great. So if they recorded it, I should be able to access it. I'd love to see it. That's great.
Yeah. Town meeting was last week or whatever. Yeah, I froze. But I think there was something on budget for mental health for, I think also in the police union contract came up too.
Mhm.
Something else. Is that right, Nicole? But there was something about it, so I think we're moving forward.
Yeah, I think there was. I don't think anything's been, nothing's definite yet. I think they're still negotiating.
I know that they have somebody from Riverside Services that's kind of embedded in the police department right now. She has a shared position with Needham and Dedham, I believe, but she's going out on calls with the police department. And it's great because it's, Riverside does all of the evaluations for the area to determine level of care. So the police department has developed a really great relationship and they have access to her. So I think that dual response has been really positive with the community when there's
Yeah, that
people in
was
crisis.
discussed. Yeah, that was thumbs
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, she worked closely with one of our community outreach officers. So normally when he takes on cases or goes on call, she usually will tag along if she's available. And I think the community responds well to that.
That's great.
Julie, you want to take over? Do you want to move on to updates and programs? Do we
Sure,
lose?
that sounds great. Updates on programs, services, and awards.
So we're still, for the most part, continuing the programs. I talked a little bit about the new programs that we're highlighting this month. Just a couple of updates. So our clinical services, our therapeutic services, we're really working on trying to get those back in person as quickly as possible. We are seeing a couple clients outside. We're seeing a couple clients in the schools, but really trying to make our office space able to have clients within our space. So I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but I think similar to what the guidance department is doing at the school, we should be able to set up here and have clients in person. One of my main reasons for doing this is, even the clients that I see in the guidance office behind the shield, 6 feet away with masks on, it still is a better experience than over Zoom. I know that there are some youth that really prefer the Zoom world and doing therapy virtually. So we will keep that as an option for people when they're more comfortable with that. But I think for some people that the in-person connection is really beneficial for that therapy experience. The one thing we're trying to figure out is for younger youth, it's really hard to do play therapy over Zoom. And you can't do it behind plexiglass 6 feet apart with masks on either. So we're just trying to figure out how we're going to do that. There's some new spaces in town hall that actually have windows that open, unlike our offices. So trying to be creative about just using different spaces. So we might be able to actually engage with the youth in that way. So we're working on that. David already highlighted Volunteers Around Needham. I was going to highlight his kids as part of that program, but we did have about 30 volunteers who helped kind of do some cleanup work in Needham. And we're working with the public health department to do in-person Volunteers Around Needham for the summertime. So we're going to do all outside activities for now. We're working with the community farm and Parks and Forestry to do some projects with them. The inside projects will probably have to wait, although we're exploring all options right now. Youth mental health first aid is still going great. We've run a couple classes and we're running one again tomorrow. The cable channel ran a story on youth mental health first aid, and we're also working with the school system on trying to figure out how to get some teachers trained and some school staff. Because again, people think, come the fall, there will be some mental health needs, and they really want people that have a lot of exposure to youth to have experience in recognizing those mental health needs. As part of our chapter 84, I did talk about this last month, but there was something that they call Kick Butts Day, Take Down Tobacco, where they meet with some, they met with Representative Denise Garlick and Senator Michael Rush to discuss the importance of legislation, mental health and addiction. The Hometown Weekly and the Needham Times both ran articles, and I did include that in the board packet as well. So it's great that we're getting some media attention around that. I think it's such an important mission. Josh, and David, what's your sense of vaping in the school these days? You know, I think there's not a ton of data on it, but I know like last year we were talking about people in the bathroom clogging toilets and everyone's going in there vaping. People are scared to go into the bathrooms, but what are people's sense on how that is right now?
Josh, you first. You'll be more accurate than I will be.
I want to say it's a little less present. However, I have only been in school half the time. But I also think that in the culture of kind of the students, it's being more and more frowned upon as time goes by. Like 3 years ago, everyone was kind of like, not like, even if you knew the risks, like you were kind of like, all right, you know what I mean? But now as it's been going on, like it's been more and more people are like leaning away from it. I've started to see.
That's great.
I'll say also same thing. I've been in school less and I think have been sort of less aware in terms of sort of walking around the halls. I tend to be in my classroom when I'm in school, but part of what I've noticed too as a teacher is like there's just less discipline stuff, right? Because the kids are sort of separated, they're not in groups, they're wearing masks, so there's not a lot of chatting. And there's also not a lot of kids leaving the classroom regularly because we do a mask break usually about halfway through, which is together and it's outside. Whereas before I sometimes would feel sort of there's this constant stream of students leaving. And with only half in the school, there's probably less opportunities also for people to meet up, right, between classes
Right.
to message each other because there's not as much as that. So
Right. That's great. How about anyone else have kids, or Nicole, any other thoughts on the vaping?
No, so in the middle school, you hear about vaping or kids talking about vaping, but again, that's maybe only a handful. And I think a lot of times it's not even, if they're doing it, it's not even on school grounds. I mean, I don't even think I can count like 5 kids that actually do it. I think it's just like that 1 or 2, but there's no proof that they're doing it. It's more just like talk. So I don't know if they're just talking to think it's cool or if they're actually doing it, you know, but it's definitely, it's not a problem at the middle school, or at least not this year.
Oh, this is the best pandemic ever.
Some positives. You got to see the silver lining.
That's right.
Yeah, we're trying to decide, you know, we started the vaping task force, was it 2 years ago, maybe, to really address this issue. And we put so many things in place, like the vaping cessation program in the high school and community events. And, you know, we're trying to decide what direction to take it in and whether we should just keep going with the programs we have or if there's an increased need. So I was curious about the pulse on that.
Yeah, I would say still educate the kids or keep the program how it is at least. Just from my side of things, I don't think there's an increased need. I think the mental health is more of a priority at this point.
Yep. Okay. So moving on to just some of our community involvement, I can say that our CCIT, the Community Crisis Intervention Team meetings, and the Youth Resource Network meetings have been busier than ever. Last month, we had a Youth Resource Network meeting that was 2 hours long, which is the longest meeting we've ever had because there were just so many families in need to present. And usually, you know, that meeting, we're discussing some very high needs families, but also there's a lot of in-between meeting conversations when there's specific needs. And I think we're seeing more of that also in between the meetings of just things, you know, families that need little things here and there that we can help with. So we're just, I think, you know, again, showing that the community, there are people who are in crisis that are just having additional needs. So some of the things that we're doing as staff, we have recently, all of our staff attended a trauma training last Friday that Wayside gave to us, which was great. And then we have a couple staff members attending the suicide prevention conference next week, which I think will be really beneficial. And also just trying to get some specialty trainings. I was talking to Carolyn today actually about trying to get like a certification trauma training that requires much more effort, but I think at this point it's needed. You know, one of the things that I'm trying to focus on is the pandemic and everything happening in the community right now might be, it's definitely trauma, but there might be some specific trauma trainings that we can really address what's happening now. And so making sure that all of our staff members are trained in how to treat youth that might be struggling right now with the pandemic, you know, with the racial incidents, and how can we help as a community. So I'm really hoping that some specialty training will help with that. I think they're all doing a wonderful job in managing, but additional training I think is always beneficial. We also have two part-time staff members who started. So Christine and Nicole, I'm hoping that they can come to the board meeting next month to meet you. And then also we have a new board member since Joshua is graduating. Congratulations. And so we'll be having a new board member join us as well.
I'm sad to be leaving, but I'm not sad to be graduating.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Josh, where are you going to school next year?
I committed to University of Maryland a little bit ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Nice.
Congratulations. Wow.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's-
Wow.
Excellent.
And that's all I got for program updates.
I got a question.
Sure.
For peer tutoring, for next year, it's all virtual now, but in September or October, when you start up again, is it going to be in person or are you going to do a mix? Because I have to say the virtual is very convenient for some people, I suppose.
Yeah, we're trying to figure it out. Wait, so for any program that we want to do in person, we have to write a proposal to public health with what we're gonna do to ensure safety. So it's a little too early to do that because I don't know what things are gonna look like. You know, all restrictions are being lifted as August 1st. Is there gonna be another wave? Is there not? So my hope is that we can do mostly in person, but we might have that virtual option. We'll just have to see how it goes.
But suppose there was no restrictions, would you still have it as an option? Because I kind of wonder if people aren't gonna ever move off Zoom again.
Yeah.
I mean, we
I mean,
all
I-
prefer it, but you know, it's great.
Yeah. No, I do think that this has changed the world as we know it. So I think for everything we do, we're hoping to have hybrid options. You know, like our youth mental health first aid class right now is all virtual. And I think that works for some people. And so we're hoping to maybe run a couple classes doing both. Same with therapy. You know, honestly, I haven't talked specifically about peer tutor, but imagining that a lot of our other programs are going in that direction, I would think that we would do that for that program as well.
All right. Any new or old business, Sarah?
Not that I can think of. You know, I mean, part of the article I wanted to share is just new solid evidence of what we're really trying to focus on. But, you know, I leave that in there just to make sure there's nothing that people have that we haven't followed up on.
Does anyone have any
Hey,
additional?
Sarah, here's a quick question. If all the increased cases you guys have, is increased cases or increased severity as well? Like, are you noticing so much more at risk, like dangerously at risk and like, oh my God, hair on fire? Or is it just like a lot of just low level?
I would say it's both. And part of the difficulty this year actually was because the acuity of the referrals we were getting was pretty significant. And so, you know, typically we use our interns for, you know, if you have a little bit of anxiety, you want to see somebody through the school year, that's great. We can assign it to some of our interns. This year, what we were, and I don't like to bounce people around from clinician to clinician. And so since the interns are leaving in May, if there's a thought that somebody wants to come in and we'll need kind of continued work past the school year, I try not to assign it to interns. But this year the acuity level of the referrals we had, they had to go to staff staff members as opposed to intern, because I think that they were a little bit too acute for interns. So we didn't utilize we did utilize them a lot, but we didn't utilize them as much for those individual clients because the acuity was so high. So we are seeing definitely more acuity. I don't, a handful of like, oh my God, hair's on fire, but just also just really, really high needs or, really prolonged struggles that I think are pretty significant.
Yeah, I got it. I mean, because looking through that report about COVID-19, so like, where would you put Needham on? Some of those numbers are really alarming. And
Yeah.
is Needham on that scale, like, oh, we're up here with everyone else, or?
I think what we see in terms of referral is like a small snapshot, like as Josh talks about, there's a lot of high school students that are just thrilled to be back, and that might decrease the isolation. And maybe some people that are experiencing, maybe a little bit more anxiety, but nothing significant, will be able to work through it on their own. So I think there's definitely increased awareness that we need to have around mental health, because I think there's an increased need and increased acuity. Are things totally out of control? I wouldn't go that far. So, I think that the community is very well supported. I think the guidance department is very aware and has a good pulse of what's happening. And we work so collaboratively with them that we've been able to provide supportive services to families in need.
Okay. And here's an oddball one, but I'm just wondering, would there be any value in Needham Youth Services having or arranging like a small conference room, if available at the high school, for like daytime, just like on-site counseling? I'm not sure like if the school has their own or.
Yeah, they let us use their rooms anytime we want to go in there. They let us
Oh.
use their rooms.
Okay.
Yeah. And they usually request it, actually. Like some of the clients that we're seeing in the school, the guidance department will reach out to us and, say, hey, I have these 2 kids. They have to be seen in school because they don't have transportation or whatever. I'll give up my office space. Just please come and see this kid, and we'll do that. Or we see some kids in NEDP. We've run school groups in some of their conference rooms. So yeah, the school, we work super collaboratively with them, and they've been great.
That's awesome. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, is there children's hospital stuff that needs to go into the notes from the meetings you were going to have on what's happening with that?
Yeah, so I know that they were going to talk about it in the Board of Health meeting. I don't know if Children's Hospital has circled back with any new updates. I don't have any, but I'll definitely keep you updated if anything new comes up.
I have that in my notes. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's important. Oh, the other thing, just to give you a heads up about, on Monday, we're meeting with the select board and some of the new members, just to talk about what each division is doing. So I'll be meeting with them on Monday and giving them a rundown of youth and family services. So just a heads up.
Oh, that's great. Excellent. All right, David.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Josh?
All right. Unanimous consent, I assume? Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, Sarah.
There we go.
Yeah,
thank you,
Thank you,
Sarah.
Sarah.
Thank you so much. Sorry for my late arrival.
No, that's okay.
And
And
Josh,
we should also think about what we want to do with this meeting moving forward. Maybe June we keep it virtual, but if we can meet, depending on people's comfort level, to meet outside somebody or somewhere, maybe the numbers are so much better in September that we can go to a conference room that has a window or something like that. So just keep it in mind. Maybe we can talk about it next month.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
No, that sounds great.
All right.
All right.
Thank you
All
all.
right. Excellent. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.